The Grand Hall of Ambassadors was the largest building in the galaxy. It stood at the center of the Imperial Station, a structure so massive that entire cities could fit inside its walls. The ceilings rose 300 meters high. The floors were made of crystal that showed the stars below. Every powerful leader in the known universe had walked through these doors at some point. Today, all of them were here. Sat in the observation gallery, high above the main floor. He was reading a book, a real book made of paper, not a holographic display. The pages were old and worn. They smelled like history. While thousands of ambassadors and military leaders gathered below to hear the emperor speak, turned another page without looking down. The book was about Earth, about the wars that humans fought long ago when they only had their own planet, about how humans learned to survive against impossible odds, about how humans learned to adapt. Had read it 17 times. He knew every word by memory, but he read it again anyway, as if the words might change and show him something new. The crowd below grew quiet. Emperor was entering the chamber. Was tall even by standards. His skin was silver and reflected the light like metal. His eyes were cold and black, like looking into empty space. He wore robes that cost more than an entire human colony. Around his neck hung medals earned from centuries of military conquest. He was the most powerful being in the galaxy. 300 years his empire had ruled. 300 years no one had challenged his authority. Today, he was going to make that power known again. The emperor walked to the center platform. His guards stood at attention behind him. The holographic displays around the hall flickered to life, showing star maps and fleet positions. Red dots appeared across the screen. They represented the Galactic Empire's warships. "The situation is simple," the emperor began. His voice was loud and hard like metal hitting metal. "The human colony network in the Outer Rim has become a problem. They hide refugees from our justice. They refuse to follow imperial law. They trade with species we have declared enemies. This will end." Turned another page. He did not look up. The emperor continued. "I am giving them 1 cycle to submit, 1 cycle to dismantle their governments and accept imperial rule, 1 cycle to put their weapons down and accept their place. If they do not comply, we will remove them. We will remove them completely." The chamber stayed silent. Everyone understood what the emperor meant. He meant destruction. He meant the end of human civilization. The Galactic Empire did not negotiate. The Empire did not accept compromise. The Empire took what it wanted. The diplomats looked satisfied. The vexed traders seemed pleased. Even the ambassadors, who usually questioned everything, said nothing. No one wanted to stand against the emperor's decision. No one wanted to seem weak. That was when laughed. It was not a nervous laugh. It was not a laugh from fear. It was a real laugh, the kind that came from someone who found something genuinely funny. The laugh filled the chamber and echoed off the crystal walls. Every being in the room heard it clearly. The emperor's face changed. The color drained from his silver skin. His guards stepped forward, ready to attack. The other ambassadors stood up from their seats. They could not believe what they were hearing. No one laughed at the emperor. No one. Closed his book carefully. He marked the page where he was reading. He stood up slowly and walked down the stairs from the observation gallery. He walked down onto the main floor where the emperor stood. He walked toward the center of the chamber where all eyes could see him. "You," the emperor said. His voice was dangerous and cold. "Who are you? Why do you mock the throne?" Stopped at a respectful distance from the emperor. He was smaller than much smaller. Every human was smaller than every other major species in the galaxy, but he did not look afraid. "My name is," he said clearly. "I am the human envoy to this council. I represent the United Earth Coalition." "You represent a dead species," the emperor replied. "Your time is ending, human. You should use it to pray, not to laugh." Smiled. "I laugh because I have read history, Your Majesty. I have studied every war your empire has fought. I have studied every species you have conquered. I have learned from the mistakes of others." He paused. "And I have learned something you need to know." The Emperor's guards moved forward. One of them grabbed by the arm, but the Emperor raised his hand. He was curious. This was interesting. An insect was speaking to him as if it had something important to say. "Then speak," the Emperor commanded. "Say your last words before you die." Did not try to pull away from the guard. He stood tall and met the Emperor's gaze directly. "One cycle is not enough time," said. He said it clearly and without any fear in his voice. "One cycle would barely let us prepare for what comes next." "Prepare for what?" the Emperor asked. The question came out sharp and mean. "To accept your terms," replied. "Humanity accepts the war you have declared. We accept that we will face your fleets. We accept that we will defend ourselves with everything we have. We accept that this will be interesting." The Emperor stared at him. Then he began to laugh too, not a kind laugh. A laugh that sounded like an engine breaking apart. "Interesting?" the Emperor repeated. "You think your death will be interesting. You think you can fight the most powerful military force in the galaxy." "I think you do not know what you are about to face," said calmly. "I think you have grown comfortable with easy victories. I think you have forgotten what happens when an enemy has nothing left to lose and everything left to fight for." The Emperor gestured to his guards. They threw to the ground. But instead of striking him again, the Emperor turned away. "Take him from my sight," the Emperor ordered. "Let him go back to his people. Let him tell them what comes. Let the humans have their one cycle. Then we will erase them from the galaxy forever." Was escorted from the chamber. As he left, he carried his book with him. In the halls outside, he opened it again and continued reading about Earth's past wars. The words on the pages seemed to glow with new meaning. History was about to repeat itself. And this time, humanity would be ready. The Empire did not know it yet, but the game had already begun, and had already made the first move. His laugh would echo through the galaxies. It would remind every listening to species that humans were not easy prey, that humans laughed at their enemies not from madness, but from understanding something the enemy had failed to see. The countdown to war had started. One cycle remained, and humanity would use every single moment of it. Commander received the message while she was in the maintenance section of Station Alpha. The message came through her personal communicator in code that only she could read. The code had been developed 40 years ago, before anyone even knew that war might come. Back then, it was just a precaution, a game almost, something the founders of the human colonies created just in case. Now it was real. The message was simple: begin Protocol 7, has made the declaration, one cycle to prepare. Read the message 3 times to make sure she understood it. Then she deleted it completely. The deletion left no record. The system would not even know the message had ever existed. This was how the humans conducted their secret operations. Everything was planned. Everything was hidden. Everything was ready to go the moment the signal came. She made her way through the station quickly. No one stopped her. No one questioned her movements. She had the clearance to go anywhere. She was a maintenance worker, the type of person that every station had thousands of. People like were invisible. That made them perfect for what needed to happen next. She entered a door marked restricted. That door led to another door. That door led down a staircase that went very deep into the station. At the bottom of the staircase was a room that did not appear on any official maps. No records existed of this room. No one knew it was there except for the 17 people who worked inside it. The room was full of computers and screens and equipment that looked ancient by galactic standards. But it was not ancient. It was human technology. Technology that had been specifically designed to be hidden. Technology that did not connect to any network that the Galactic Empire could access. Technology that was completely invisible. Inside this room, found Colonel James Taylor waiting for her. James was a military officer, but he wore no uniform. His hair was gray, and his face was lined with the weight of keeping a secret for his entire life. He had been preparing for war for longer than some entire species had existed. "They took the bait?" James asked without any greeting. Laughed, replied. "The Empire accepted the one-cycle term. Everything is going according to plan." James nodded slowly. He walked over to a large map that covered an entire wall. The map showed every human colony, every human ship, every human installation in the outer rim. Red lines showed the supply routes. Blue lines showed the defense positions. Green lines showed the escape routes. Every strategic position was marked and planned. "Begin the protocols," James said. His voice sounded like a man who had been waiting for these words for his entire life. What happened next was the real war. Not the fighting, not the battles, the preparation. The underground preparation that no one in the Galactic Empire knew about. On 17 different human colonies, emergency signals went out. The signals reached people who had been waiting for years. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, people who had dedicated their lives to building defenses that could work against impossible odds. These people came out of hiding and went to work. On Europa Station, a facility that was officially a scientific research center, Dr. Palmer activated the weapon systems that had been hidden beneath the facility for decades. The systems were not large. They did not require enormous amounts of energy, but they worked on principles that the Galactic Empire did not understand because humans had invented them. Humans had created new ways of thinking about warfare. On Mars Colony, another team of engineers began removing camouflage from military installations that looked like civilian buildings, weapons that appeared to be communication towers, shields that appeared to be solar collectors. The humans had become experts at hiding their strength beneath the surface of things. Every colony had received the same instructions years ago. Prepare as if war will come. Build defenses. Hide them. Wait for the signal. When the signal comes, activate everything. Do not hesitate. Do not second guess. Just go to work. The human fleet was being activated too. Not the official fleet that the Galactic Empire knew about. That fleet would be destroyed in the first attack. Everyone knew that. But there were other ships. Smaller ships. Faster ships. Ships that had been built in secret shipyards and hidden in asteroid fields and kept in repair stations that no Galactic Empire official had ever found. These ships were commanded by people like Captain Roger Mitchell. Roger had been trained in secret military academies where they studied human history and human warfare. They studied what happened when humans fought against enemies that were stronger and more powerful. They studied David and Goliath. They studied the American Revolution. They studied the wars of ancient Earth where smaller forces defeated larger ones through tactics and intelligence and refusal to accept defeat. The humans understood something that the Galactic Empire had forgotten. The Galactic Empire had been winning for so long that they had stopped thinking about how to fight. They had grown comfortable. They had started assuming that bigger was always better, that more weapons always won, that their enemies would simply surrender rather than fight. But humans came from a harsh world. Earth was full of dangerous things. Humans had learned to survive through adaptation and cleverness, and the refusal to quit even when things seemed impossible. This was in their blood. This was in their history. This was who they were. And James worked through the night. They sent messages to every colony. They activated supply lines. They moved weapons into positions that no one would expect. They prepared places for civilians to hide. They created backup plans and backup plans for the backup plans. Everything was organized with perfect precision. By the end of the first day, the human colonies had transformed from peaceful communities into a military machine. But no one could see it from the outside. Everything still looked normal. The civilian ships still flew their normal routes. The workers still went to their normal jobs. The colonies still broadcast their normal communications. But underneath all of that, everything had changed. The Galactic Empire waited for one cycle. They assumed that the humans would use the time to try to escape, or to make peace offers, or to beg for mercy. The Empire did not understand that humans had already started their real preparations the moment the declaration was made. Sat in the diplomatic station and continued reading his book. The book about Earth's history. The book about wars that humans had won against impossible odds. The book that taught him everything he needed to know about his own species. He knew that the countdown was happening. He knew that everything was ready. He knew that when the Empire's fleets finally came, they would meet something they had never encountered before. They would meet a species that had learned to survive the impossible. The Galactic Empire's attack came exactly on time. The Empire was always precise about timing. Precision was part of military doctrine. Strike at the exact moment planned. Give the enemy no time to prepare. Give them no time to think. Just overwhelming force at the moment they expect it. 147 warships emerged from faster-than-light transit at the outer boundary of human space. The ships were enormous. Some of them were as large as small moons. They carried weapons that could destroy cities. They carried shields that could withstand attacks from 100 other ships. The Empire had fought 1,000 wars. They had conquered 1,000 species. They had never lost. This would be no different, the commanders thought. The lead ship was the Prime, named after the Emperor himself. It was the most powerful warship ever built. Its commander was Supreme General, a being who had fought for 300 years and never suffered a defeat, stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the star maps showing his fleet's approach. Target the main human colonies, ordered. I want planetary defenses destroyed in the first wave. Send ground forces to secure the industrial centers. Take prisoners if possible. If not, kill everything. His officers moved quickly to execute the orders. The fleet began moving into attack formation. The human colonies would not know what hit them. The humans probably thought they had months before the Empire came. The humans were primitives. They did not understand military strategy. But the humans were already waiting. Captain Roger Mitchell sat in the command center of the hidden station called Fortress 7. The station was hidden inside an asteroid field so dense that most ships could not navigate through it, but human ships could. Humans had practiced flying through that asteroid field for years. They knew every rock. They knew every current. They could navigate it in their sleep. Roger watched the sensor screens. The screens showed the approach of 147 Empire warships. Most of the screens were blank because Roger's station was old Earth technology. The screens did not work as well as Empire technology, but they worked well enough. They showed him what he needed to know. The Empire was coming right at them, exactly as predicted, exactly as planned. All units to battle stations, Roger said calmly. His voice went out to 17 different hidden positions. 17 different groups of human soldiers and pilots and officers, all of them hidden, all of them waiting. Confirm battle readiness, Roger continued. The responses came back one after another. All 17 positions reported ready. All of them had weapons loaded. All of them had pilots in their seats. All of them had been waiting for this moment for their entire lives. The Empire's lead strike group consisted of 12 destroyers and 30 smaller attack ships. Their mission was to destroy human orbital defenses and begin the invasion. They had no idea what was about to happen. Roger watched the sensors. The Empire ships were getting closer. They were now within striking distance. The lead destroyers were starting to target the main human colonies. In seconds, they would fire their weapons. The bombardment would begin. Thousands of human civilians would die. Fire, Roger said. Human missiles came out of the asteroid field from positions the Empire did not know existed. Missiles built with human technology. Weapons designed specifically to work against Galactic Empire ships. The missiles were not as powerful as Empire weapons, but there were a lot of them, and they came from places the Empire was not defending. the lead Empire destroyer took a direct hit to its engine core. The destroyer exploded in a bright red flash that filled the darkness of space. The next destroyer tried to turn to avoid the missiles. It was hit 3 times before it could move far enough away. The Empire commanders were stunned. They had not detected any human forces. The scanners showed nothing. The defenses were not supposed to be here. The humans were not supposed to be here. "Return fire," Supreme General ordered. His voice remained calm, but something had changed in his expression. "Find the source of those missiles and destroy it." But by the time the Empire ships figured out where the missiles came from and tried to fire back, the human forces were already moving. They were repositioning. They were hitting from different angles. They were doing exactly what humans had learned to do from centuries of survival on a harsh world. They were adapting. Captain Roger Mitchell gave new orders. His pilots launched their ships from hidden hangars inside the asteroid field. The ships came out in waves. Not many ships, maybe 50 total across all 17 positions. Against 147 massive warships, 50 small ships seemed like nothing. But these pilots knew something the Empire pilots did not know. They knew how to fight against superior numbers. They knew because humans had been doing it for thousands of years. The human pilots flew in coordinated patterns. They did not try to fight in direct combat. Instead, they attacked the engines and fuel systems and communication arrays. They attacked the weak points that every warship had. The Empire had designed its ships to be strong against direct assault. The Empire had not designed them for what humans were doing. 5 more Empire destroyers were destroyed in the next few minutes. Another 6 were damaged so badly that they had to retreat. The Empire had lost 1/10 of its force and had not fired a single successful shot at the human colonies. In the diplomatic station, received the battle report. The report showed that the Empire strike group was retreating. The report showed that the humans had inflicted massive damage while losing only 3 ships. 3 ships against 147 was not an equal trade, but the humans had won. Turned the page of his book. He had known this would happen. He had planned for it. The humans could not defeat the Empire through direct force. The human population was too small. The human technology was too basic by galactic standards, but the humans had something else. They had experience fighting against impossible odds. They had learned to win through tactics and adaptation and refusal to accept defeat. Supreme General received the news that his strike group was in retreat. For the first time in 3 centuries of warfare, his fleet had been beaten. His ships had been destroyed by a species that should not have been able to put up any resistance at all. Understood something in that moment. He understood that this war would not be quick. This war would not be easy. The humans had prepared for this moment. The humans knew something about warfare that the Galactic Empire had forgotten. The first true battle of the war had ended in human victory, but it was only the beginning. The Empire would send more ships. The Empire would send bigger forces. The Empire would keep coming until they won. But the humans would be waiting every single time, adapting, learning, fighting in ways the Empire had never seen before. This war was going to change everything, for both sides. The war lasted for 34 days. In those 34 days, the Galactic Empire lost 512 warships. They also lost thousands of soldiers and officers. The losses were enormous. The losses were unprecedented. In 300 years of warfare, the Empire had never experienced anything like this. And humanity was losing too. They had lost 217 ships. 7 of their colonies were damaged heavily. Thousands of human civilians had died. The humans did not have the resources to keep fighting. If the war lasted much longer, humanity would be destroyed completely. But the Galactic Empire was starting to understand something important, something that Emperor himself was beginning to see. The human defenses were not designed to win a war of attrition. They were designed to survive, to take damage and keep functioning, to adapt to every new Empire strategy and counter it with something unexpected. The longer the war went on, the longer humanity could survive. And with each day that passed, the human forces learned more. They learned how the Empire fought. They learned how to predict Empire movements. They learned how to defeat Empire tactics. The Empire was going to eventually overwhelm them through sheer numbers and power. But it would take time, months of time, maybe years of time. And for every month, the Empire would lose hundreds of ships and thousands of soldiers. This was not the quick victory the Emperor had expected. Requested a meeting with the Emperor, not in the grand hall of ambassadors. That place seemed wrong now, filled with the tension of coming war. Instead, they met in a private chamber, just and the Emperor and a small number of guards. The war cannot continue, said. He spoke calmly and clearly. He did not show fear. You are right. You will eventually win. Your forces are stronger than ours. Your resources are greater. Your numbers are larger. In a war of attrition, you will destroy us. The Emperor listened without speaking. He wanted to hear what the human envoy had to say. But the cost will be enormous, continued. Thousands of your ships destroyed, hundreds of thousands of your soldiers dead, industrial production disrupted across your empire, your military spread too thin, your other enemies sensing weakness and moving against you. Perhaps, the Emperor said, but you will still be destroyed. That outcome does not change. No, agreed. We will be destroyed if this war continues, but neither of us wants this war to continue. You do not want to lose 500 more ships. You do not want to lose another 100,000 soldiers. You do not want to see what happens if other species decide that the Empire might not be invincible after all. The Emperor's face showed nothing, but something in his eyes changed. He was listening seriously now. Move to stand closer. What if I told you that humanity was not a threat to your empire? What if I told you that we did not come here to challenge your authority? What if I told you that we came here because Earth was too crowded, too damaged, too full of conflict? We came to start new lives in a peaceful place. Then why did you hide weapons? The Emperor asked. Why did you prepare for war if you wanted peace? Because we knew war was coming, said simply. Not from any choice of ours. We knew because you told us. You gave us one cycle to prepare. We used that cycle to prepare not for invasion but for survival. We prepared defenses because peaceful species get destroyed. We prepared weapons because powerless species get conquered. We did what any species does when faced with an enemy that gives them a chance to prepare. The Emperor stood and walked to the window. Outside, through the crystal walls, he could see the battle damage on his own ships docked at the station. Ships that had been in orbit when the human attacks came. Ships that would take months to repair. What do you propose? The Emperor asked. Let humanity remain independent, said. Not as an enemy, not as a subject species, but as an independent civilization within your empire. Recognize our right to govern ourselves. Allow us to maintain our own military for defense. In exchange, we will promise not to expand beyond our current territories. We will promise to follow empire laws in matters of trade and peace. We will become allies rather than enemies. The Emperor turned back to face. You are asking me to allow rebellion to continue, the Emperor said coldly. I am asking you to recognize reality, replied. Rebellion only happens when people believe they have no other choice. Give humans another choice. Give us the choice to remain free but loyal. We will choose loyalty. We will choose to join your empire as partners instead of prisoners. Why should I believe you? The Emperor demanded. Because you have studied us, said. You know that we came here to escape a life of constant war and conflict. You know that we are willing to work hard and adapt to new situations. You know that we have proven we can survive in hostile environments. You know that we think differently than other species. You know all of this because you have been studying humanity for years, just as we have been studying you. The Emperor was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. If I agree to this proposal, humans will have certain obligations. You will provide technology to our military. You will provide soldiers to serve in the Empire's forces. You will allow us to study your defensive systems. You will prove your loyalty in concrete ways." "We agree to all of that," said immediately. "We have no problem sharing what we know. We want to be part of something greater than ourselves. We want to be part of your empire. We just want to remain free while we do it." The Emperor extended his hand. It was a human gesture. Humans had taught the Empire's diplomats human customs over many years. "Then we have an agreement," the Emperor said. "I will present it to the Imperial Council. The war ends now. Humanity will be recognized as an independent civilization within the Galactic Empire." Shook the Emperor's hand. The gesture felt right, felt like something was ending and something new was beginning. The humans had not defeated the Empire through force. They had survived long enough that the Empire realized they were worth more alive and free than dead and conquered. This was how real power worked sometimes, not through strength, through understanding what your enemy needed and offering it to them in exchange for what you needed. The treaty took 3 weeks to write. Legal experts from 17 different human colonies worked with imperial lawyers to create a document that would set the terms for humanity's place in the galactic community. The process was difficult. Both sides had to make compromises. Both sides had to accept terms they did not like. But in the end, they reached an agreement. The Accords, they called it, named after the man who had negotiated the peace. The Accords gave humanity autonomous status within the Galactic Empire. Humans would have their own governments on their own worlds. Humans would have representation in the Imperial Council. Humans would maintain their own military forces for self-defense. In exchange, humanity agreed to follow imperial law regarding trade and foreign relations. Humans agreed to allow the Empire to study their defensive systems and technologies. Humans agreed to provide military advisors to the Empire. Humans agreed that if the Empire was attacked, humanity would come to the Empire's defense. It was a fair deal for both sides. The Empire kept its unity and kept growing. Humanity got to remain free. Emperor announced the treaty in the Grand Hall of Ambassadors, the same hall where he had declared war just one cycle before. Now he stood in that hall and announced peace. The Galactic Empire had gained something more valuable than a conquered species. They had gained allies who could think differently, who could solve problems in new ways, who could teach the Empire how to adapt. The other species in the galaxy were shocked. They had expected the Empire to crush humanity completely. They had expected the humans to be extinct within months. Instead, humanity had survived. Humanity had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. This changed everything. Suddenly, other small species that the Empire had been considering conquering began to wonder if they could resist as well. The Empire found that maintaining control required something more than just overwhelming force. It required showing that conquest was not always worth the cost. Returned to Earth 3 weeks after the treaty was signed, he came back as a hero to the human colonies. Statues were built in his honor. Schools were named after him. Children learned about the man who had saved humanity by understanding the enemy better than the enemy understood themselves. But did not celebrate. He went home to his small house in the hills of New Earth Colony. He sat in his study with the old book he had been reading, the book about human history, the book that had inspired everything he did. He opened to a bookmark that marked where he had stopped reading. He picked up from the middle of a sentence and continued. The book was about the ancient human philosopher named Sun. Sun had written about war and tactics and how to win against enemies that were stronger. Most of what needed to know had come from that book. Most of what humanity had done had been built on principles that a human philosopher had written thousands of years ago. The words still made sense. They would always make sense, because they were about human nature. They were about how humans could survive anything if they understood the enemy and understood themselves. Within 5 years of the treaty, human military tactics were being studied in imperial academies across known space. Human engineers were working alongside Galactic Empire engineers on new weapon systems. Human scientists were sharing their knowledge with species that had been trying to solve the same problems for centuries, but had approached them from a different direction. Humans had learned on Earth that the best solutions often came from combining different ways of thinking. The Galactic Empire was becoming different because of humanity, more flexible, more adaptive, more willing to understand enemies instead of just crushing them. Some of the Imperial generals did not like the changes. They wanted to go back to the old ways of overwhelming force, but Emperor had learned something that would stay with him for the rest of his reign. He had learned that a species that could adapt and think differently was worth keeping around, that the future belonged to those who could change and learn from new situations. Became the commander of the first human military base inside the Galactic Empire. She worked with both human soldiers and Empire soldiers. She taught them how to fight together, how to combine human adaptability with Empire strength, how to create military units that were stronger than either side could have been alone. Roger Mitchell became the captain of the first human ship in the Empire's fleet. His ship fought alongside Empire warships in missions protecting Imperial territory. The human ship won several commendations for bravery and tactical excellence. Other species began to respect human abilities. Dr. Palmer was offered a position as the chief of the Imperial Science Council. He turned it down. He wanted to keep working with humans, teaching the next generation of human scientists how to think about problems in new ways. But he agreed to advise the council. He agreed to help bridge the gap between human science and imperial science. Years passed. Humans began to be seen as normal members of the galactic community. They were no longer the strange species from Earth. They became traders. They became explorers. They became soldiers in the Empire's military. They became scientists and engineers and teachers. They became part of something bigger than themselves. Spent his final years writing. He wrote about the treaty. He wrote about what he had learned. He wrote about how understanding your enemy was more important than defeating them. His writings became popular. Other species read them and started thinking about their own conflicts in new ways. When died at an age considered quite old for a human, he was remembered across the galaxy, not as a military hero, not as a great general, but as a man who had understood that real power came from understanding others. Real victory sometimes came from becoming part of something greater. The humans learned to call it the day of the laugh, the day when had laughed at the Emperor, the day when an entire species had refused to accept defeat, the day when humanity had chosen to adapt rather than fight to the death. It was the day that changed everything for humanity. The day they proved that understanding could be more powerful than weapons. The day they proved that small species could survive in a galaxy full of larger, stronger enemies. All they had to do was learn to think differently. All they had to do was refuse to accept that they were weak. All they had to do was remember that humans had learned to survive on a harsh world. And that skill, that ability to adapt and survive, would never go away. The stars had finally become a place where humanity belonged.